Good evening, everyone, or good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you are. Monaco 64 here, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So make sure you tell me if you can hear me properly. I think you probably can. Brady says he's got a 6 handicap of the ladies' tee. The title of the live stream is Political, Economic, and Social Crisis All at Once. It seems to be kicking off in the States. It hasn't spread anywhere else at the moment. I saw that in London they're protesting, or they're doing something this afternoon about what's going on in the States. Hi, Ben Gray. Hi, Lily. Smash thumbs up. Yeah. Justin, Peter Richard, Justin Timber. Arduous time, says Bobcat. Ahead across most realms, looks like. Yeah, it does. I made a video. Well, I'll wait a little bit until we get more people. But I think we probably don't. We probably should not jump to conclusions about what's going on in the States right now. I mean, it looks like the health crisis. No one's talking about it anymore, and now we're talking about this other crisis that we have. It seems to me to be another case of divide and conquer. They want to keep people divided. That's what the powers that be do. And I think maybe they realized that the health crisis wasn't getting any traction. Who knows? Yeah, Billy, he's not here right now. He's gone upstairs. I did a video earlier today. He was in that video. Piotr 65 from the Netherlands. Invest intense. Powell got a handful. One thing I said in my video today that is ironic is that George Floyd, he was suspected of having a counterfeit $20 bill. And I said it would be great if law enforcement was if they did such a thorough job as they did with that guy, that poor guy, if they did that with Jay Powell and his friends at the Fed. Because look at how many trillions of counterfeit dollars they've created this year. I think it's almost 3 trillion now. Yeah, that's right. Low blood pressures. They're all counterfeit anyway, right? Olgi, good point. CV19 didn't collapse the system, so they have to go to the next level. Yeah, and I think it's only going to be an American, event, because I think all the other countries are done for. America is still a strong country. I think they need to really get America down. And I'm not saying I want that. I'm just observing. So we've got a few more people here now, almost 200. I wanted to talk a little bit about a video I did back in April, and I'll put it's called. I'll get the link in a minute. Hold on, and it's called "Market Volatility Off the Charts as We Enter the Depths of the Fourth Turning." I recommend you watch that again. Maybe you don't remember. Maybe you didn't watch it. Maybe you weren't a subscriber back then. But in that video, I talk about how cycles have worked socially, economically, politically in the US, especially since, for hundreds of years. And a fourth turning is usually 80 years. That's like the length of a life. And I noted that one of the first turnings or fourth turnings was during the American Revolutionary period against the British. And you always get a leader. that people remember a lot. They might seem, 100, 150, 200 years later like great leaders, but people forget at the time they're very divisive. So George Washington, yes, he's seen as the father of the nation, but back then America was divided as well. I think it was only 5% of the population that wanted to split up from Britain. So we have to keep that in mind. So that was the first fourth turning in independent America, so to speak. And the second one was around 1860. Country divided again. Lincoln, people forget, the reason the southern states seceded was, and I think most of them did, a lot of them did it right after his inauguration. So he was a divisive figure as well. I know he's seen nowadays by many, a great majority, as a great leader. And then 80 years later, 1860, 80 years, 1940, around the time of World War II. So FDR, the leader. So you add you add 1940, you add 80, you get 2020. And there's a book, The Fourth Turning, by these two authors, Strauss and Howe. And they wrote that book back in the early 2000s or even in the 90s. And the fourth turning takes usually about 20 years. And they said that the fourth turning of the current generation started in 2005. And that's what I said. I think things are going to get really crazy. I said that in the beginning of April, and it looks like that's happening. We'll have to see. I don't want to jump to conclusions about what's happening in terms of the riots and the protests in the States. Someone mentioned that it's George Soros that's organizing it. I think it's much bigger than just one person. It's not. He might have some involvement in it, but I think there are a lot of things that have been boiling up as well in not only in the United States, but all over the place, here in the UK, in Europe. We've seen more and more the very, very rich get richer and richer. They've done really well from the '08 collapse. They were bailed out, and they've done really well in this crisis as well. I've seen some headlines saying they've made hundreds of billions of dollars. And the small people, they keep getting shafted, so to speak. And I think partly it's because of that. Yeah, maybe Soros was involved, but if people weren't unhappy about their lot, this kind of protests and riots wouldn't be going on either. So I'll stop here for the moment, and I'll look at some of your questions if you got some. Again, if I don't see some of your questions, it's just because there's more and more people usually here now. Pikervots, what Pikervots say, America is very welcome back into the Commonwealth. We've kept a seat. Charles Patterson, something about a raging sea that keeps one on their toes. Anonymous, DMC, if inflation's dead ahead, how would gold remain so strong and rise further? Please. Elliott wave theorists suggest gold is going much lower. Well, the Elliott wave guys, I've followed them for years. I haven't followed them recently. I remember in the 2000s, about 10 years ago, they were saying that you've got people like Harry Dent saying that gold is going to 700. Well, usually gold does well in an inflation fiat inflationary period, and gold does well as well in deflationary period. And by deflation, I don't mean lower prices. By deflation, I mean a contraction of the money supply. I think what we have now is inflation, which is the expansion of money and credit. And I think gold will continue to do well. The central bankers and also the governments, they're working together now. You've got the governments issuing the debt to do fiscal spending, because they are all Keynesians, right? And you got the governments obliging by buying that debt, by printing money out of thin air. So I can't see gold and silver not doing well versus fiat currency, because it's just a simple law of supply and demand. The more of something you create relative to something else, that thing that you create more will lose value relative to that. And it's as simple as that. And seeing that gold and silver have been money for thousands of years and are a really good yardstick for value. Uh, yeah, so that's how I see it going up. Uh, and I haven't, Elliott wave. The thing about Elliott wave, a lot of times that kind of analysis does work and is purely technical. But they always, sometimes if it doesn't work, they change the waves. So I'm not concerned about it because gold and silver are money and they'll protect you, I think, especially in these uncertain times. V. Bjorn Gritton, you're always very calm still when all this crazy stuff going on. That's good. Makes me calm too. Yeah, V. Bjorn, it's no point unless you're right in the middle of it. And I don't intend to go travel to the US to go and riot. So, I mean, I got up early this morning. I played golf. So everything is well with the world. Am I saying I'm not concerned about people being angry and like feeling angry about injustice? No, but we can't let it get to us. And that's why I don't watch TV. Maybe that's why I'm calm. I haven't watched it for many years, especially the news. Lily Robin, I always appreciate your calm manner. I was crying this morning over some videos. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. Jackie Saunders, I read Fiat Money Inflation. We haven't learned anything. We never learn, Jackie. I think that's the only thing that is always constant, is that people always make the same mistakes because they don't bother to learn history. And history doesn't repeat exactly, but it rhymes. I think it was Mark Twain or someone who said that. Mario removed your crypto donations. I removed some of them because some of those addresses are no good anymore, and people could have been sending it to nowhere. So I still got Bitcoin, I think, and Litecoin, and a couple of others. How much paper gold does it take to slam the market $30? Um, I think it depends on the futures market. If it's very quiet, if it's like after the regular hours on Comex are 8:30 New York or 8:20 New York to 1:30 New York. So after 1:30 p.m., if the markets are quiet, they can come in and sell maybe 1,000 or 2,000 lots. So 1,000 each lot is 100 ounces. So yeah, they could sell 200,000 paper ounces and get the market to move lower. And also they will pick spots. For example, if everyone trading gold knows that there's a key technical level, when it gets closer to that level, what these bullion banks and these manipulators do is they'll go and hit the bid at that level, and it triggers stop losses, and then other people start selling to trigger their sell stops, and it's just self-fulfilling. So it depends, but yeah, I would say when it's quiet, 1,000 to 2,000 lots. That's probably what they need, which isn't that much for them. You mentioned Brazil, that the banks looked okay, but small businesses were failing. Yeah, what I was trying to say is that the banks always do well. So even in Brazil in the 80s when things weren't great, I remember I didn't follow when I was younger too much markets, but I remember that things were quite good for the banks, and I didn't quite get it, if and the markets if the economy was not doing well. But banks do well in inflations as well. Comex ever going to fail in delivery? Well, Comex itself does, it's just an exchange. The people that the institutions that trade on Comex. I saw an article the other day that there's been a lot of physical um, like deliveries on Comex, the biggest ever. And I think they probably had problems with that because the Comex, and I worked in the futures market for 20 years. There's someone here that needs to be removed. All right. Yeah, I worked in the futures market for many years, and trading gold futures was not the core of my business, but I did do it once in a while. And the bosses I had over the years, they always said, never tell your clients to take delivery, because we never do it. So it's the contract says it's a physical contract, but people hardly ever use it. But it seems like they're starting to use it now because they can't get gold anywhere else. And they think, oh, let's try on Comex. And Comex has been caught off guard. Pat, will gold gap way up at the open with all the chaos here in the States? We even had protests in a town very close to me here in West Central Indiana. Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. That's probably what people would think, but you never know with the markets. I think it's a little too early to say whether that will happen. I think if what's going on now in the States keeps going for weeks, for weeks, then yeah, we could say that there's a big problem, political, social. There's loss of faith and confidence in government institutions as well. And I'm not talking left or right, just the state itself. And in the US, you have the federal state, you have each individual state. And I've spoken about this quite a few times, because if you read about Weimar Germany in 1923, they had really a lot of political unrest in Germany at that time, mainly because after World War One, at the end of it, the German Empire collapsed. The Kaiser Wilhelm had to flee Germany. He went into exile into Holland. So the political situation in Germany was very volatile. Like Munich, Bavaria wanted to go independent. There was a lot of assassinations, a lot of riots. So, and then we got the hyperinflation because people lost faith and confidence in the state, and the state is the institution that issues the currency. So this is concerning because, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but this is one of the conditions for hyperinflation. You need a lot of debt. You need a economy that's not doing well. You need central banks printing a lot of money, which we've got, and you need a lot of political unrest. So yeah, this is getting interesting. But we had some riots here in London in 2011 in the summer, and yeah, at the time we thought, oh, what's going to happen? But it just went away very quickly. We'll have to see if the same thing happens here. Who knows? I think it might be the real thing. Who knows? June 12th, 1776 thinks they're useless except to blow off some steam. You're talking about the demonstrations and riots. Yeah, you're right. And that's what I was saying about what happened here in 2011. But we just have to see if it evolves into something else than just riots. Uh, I watch. I don't know if you guys know Richie from Boston. He's been saying, for the last few months that the military is going all around the country. He was driving all around the country during the lockdown, and he saw a lot of U.S. military in the U.S. They're not supposed to be there. So, and we're seeing now how they're ready to be used, right? Hi, Mr. B. Nice to see you. Justin Timber, can you explain, please, how the states in South America are affected on the dollar collapse when it comes? I think it's not just in South America. All countries will be affected uh, when the dollar goes down, because the dollar is the major reserve currency. Most countries have dollar reserves to back their monetary system. So if the major reserve backing their banking and monetary system collapses, their currency collapses too. So uh, yeah, it will be in South America, Europe, Africa, Asia, everywhere. Tom Manley, the Guard is now in the worst cities and will be diffused. POTUS is calling Antifa a terror organization. Well, it's funny because when there are protests and riots in Hong Kong, they're called pro-democracy, right? But in the States, they're called terrorists. So I'm not sure. I'm not going to speculate about this. So who knows? I'm, and what I've heard is that a lot of the protests that started out, I think, were peaceful, and then there were a few people or out there who wanted something else. They're violent. But whatever is happening, I think we need to look at the divide and conquer. I think this is what it's about. They want to, they've realized now, the administration or Congress or whatever, that people are not buying into the health crisis, so they've had to start another crisis. Who knows? And the Trump situation is very, for me, confusing. I'm not too convinced about Trump. Uh, I mean, if he wasn't playing along with the deep state or the globalists, why would he be pushing for vaccines? Why would he have signed a bill increasing the national debt by 6 trillion to help the globalists who are the major Wall Street banks and the major corporations? So that's what you need to think. It's all very confusing. I know there's still a lot of people out there who think the current president is going to solve everything, but it doesn't look like it to me. There seems to be, no matter what you think, that you think it's the left that's doing this, it's happening. I'm just observing and trying to guess what might happen in the world and how it could affect the currency. Tony Cardoza, this civil unrest, next hyperinflation, welcome to Zimbabwe. Yeah, Tony, that's what I said. The recipe for hyperinflation is a great depression, which we have. It's a lot of debt. It's the central bank monetizing the debt, which we have. And this is the last kind of ingredient, is the political and civil unrest. And even like some of you have said, it's all contrived or it was organized. No matter what, if it evolves, it doesn't matter. It's there. John Meyer, thank you for the super chat. Um, John says, keep up the good work. Thank you. Yeah, lots of stimulus going in America. Yeah, I spoke to Mike from Rethinking the Dollar the other day, and you were saying that Congress now, the Democrats, basically, they want to bring in a few more stimulus. I saw a headline this afternoon here in the UK. The Chancellor of the Exchequer, who's the equivalent of the Treasury Secretary, he wants to bring in another fiscal stimulus in July. That's why you need gold and silver. If you keep a hold of current fiat currency, you'll be decimated. Of course, you need it to pay your bills during the month, but if you're fortunate to have a lot of extra or savings, I wouldn't keep it in them. Zenor Man, thank you for the super chat. Thank you very much. Yeah, Peter Richard, I think the 1%, they're benefiting a whole lot more from this bailout, because it is a bailout, and this time they're bailing out everything, but and they even bailing out some of the general public, but it's crumbs compared to the Wall Street bankers and the major corporations. I saw a headline saying that the elite or the very wealthy have made hundreds of billions of dollars from this Fed and Treasury bailout of the last few months. Tom Manley, our Treasury now has trillions to spend on infrastructure. The world is inflating their paper. I'm not too sure about that. I think the Treasury is crowding out the private economy. Governments don't create wealth. Infrastructure, yeah, it's good to have good infrastructure, but the benefits from infrastructure, they don't come very quickly. And yeah, you just have to look at the U.S. debt clock. I mean, it's forecasting debt like at 45 trillion in 2024 and at 75 trillion in 2028 with GDP falling. I think that's unsustainable. Phoenix FP40, thank you for the super chat. How do you see a no-deal Brexit affecting the pound? I think it's irrelevant, Brexit, to the pound. The establishment in this country have to inflate the pound. That means they have to make the pound go lower. But a no-deal Brexit versus the euro might help the pound versus the euro. But in the long term, as I've told a lot of my viewers, you need to be out of any kind of paper, be it the pound, the British pound, or the euro, or the Aussie dollar, or the US dollar. You need to have precious metals, because the only way to make all the debt that they've created, how can I say, to make that carryable or serviceable, is to inflate the currency or make it be worth less. If you go back to the Napoleonic War, I think the debt incurred by this country was around, I don't know, 200 million pounds, let's say, or 300 million. And if you look at the debt now, is in the trillions. So that 100 million that was incurred during the Napoleonic Wars, up until recently, we had what's called consols or perpetual bonds that were issued during the Napoleonic Wars. And it was probably about 100 million. I don't know exactly, but it was very easy to pay off because of the inflation. So that's why I don't see the pound doing well in general. But if there's a no-deal Brexit, it could do well versus the euro. Yeah, Lily Robin is talking about a father of her friend. My friend's father had some precious metals in a safety deposit box, and it was closed for months because of the lockdown, so you couldn't get a hold of it. Well, with gold investments, for example, they can keep your gold safe, and they've been open the whole crisis. And even if you can't, so if you keep your gold with them, let's say you have 50 ounces of gold with them, and you need some money, and we're under lockdown, they'll still take it from your account, they'll sell it, and they'll send you the fiat if you need the fiat. So there are places, and it's safe, and it's insured as well. I think they charge £4 per ounce per year, and if you have more, the cost goes down. At what point will the miners stop mining? Pabar, I assume you're talking about gold miners or silver miners. I think they will only stop mining if the prices drop too much and it's not economical to mine. But right now, I don't think that's the point. That's the case. I've actually bought some miners. I usually don't. I haven't had mining stocks. I sold some I had in my pension last year. Recently, I bought some GDX and GDXJ last week. And I also bought some of Jim Sinclair's company, Tanzanian Royalty Exploration. I bought that about 3 weeks ago. Am I advising you guys to do that? No, it's just what I'm doing. Just you need to do your homework. Cupid's done a good week for gold and silver. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. I mean, I did a video earlier today. The long-term charts look pretty good, especially the monthly gold chart. So we'll see. Someone asked me earlier with what's going on in the States, is gold and silver, are they going to gap up tomorrow? Well, normally they should, but you never know with gold and silver. Sander 1981, thank you for the super chat. Can you explain why you're so certain capital destruction will not reduce total money in circulation? Peter Schiff and you never talk about capital destruction side of things. Capital destruction, you mean like the default of bonds? Well, because right now the Fed is not allowing capital to be destroyed because they're intervening and they're saving those assets by buying them and raising their prices and injecting liquidity into the system. You had capital destruction back in the 30s, and gold still did well, because when you have capital destruction, you have bankruptcies, and that's real deflation. But if you look at the M2 chart, not only in the US, but in the UK, or money supply, it's going up. So right now we don't have capital destruction because they won't allow it. So the only way that it will be destroyed, I think, is through hyperinflation, because they'll destroy the currency in which a lot of that capital is denominated, especially the paper capital. Because when they say there's a lot of money and credit in the system, it's not real wealth. It's like bonds, it's loans. So that's the way I see it. Hopefully I answered your question. Silver Miner AG. Sorry, I don't know that one. And I don't give advice on companies, but yeah, I haven't heard of AG. That's right, June 2012, 1772. They're not allowing it. So by not allowing it, that's what the Reichsbank did they were doing. They wouldn't allow things to correct. So eventually, the way they're going to pay for that is that the currency is going to become worthless. Pat says he bought calls on Barrick Mining, that 2020 at the money. I think they restart after COVID. Yeah, I mean, at the money, I guess, that's almost like buying the stock. Um, I prefer doing options out of the money, so you get a little more of a welly on it, but the delta is a little bigger. Well, I guess you've got till deck 2020. That's right, Robert Hollyoak. QE is destroying all currencies. Bobby 827 is saying that the Floyd thing was a public execution. I'm not sure it's got any. They don't want Trudeau. You mean Trump reelected? I'm not sure how political this is. It seems like in the U.S. right now, and that's the bad thing about the U.S. That's why things are not going to get better. People always take sides, left and right, even with the health crisis, which I agree was totally engineered. Yeah, and that's the problem. That's the problem with the U.S. right now. It's very divided. So I don't see a way out. Hopefully, what's going on right now is going to dissipate and not be around in the next few weeks, but we'll have to see. But it is one of the ingredients for hyperinflation, political instability and mayhem. And that's what we have in the States, it looks like. Jeff says it's a great, beautiful day for golf in Florida, a little warm. I'm sure it is. I played this morning here in London, and it was very warm, actually. Probably not as warm and humid as in Florida. Just reality. When do you think we hit holy CRP moment in terms of inflation in the UK? I think we've been having the inflation, and unless you were like work for the Bank of England or in the city and you weren't, you know, a lot of money, you don't notice. But go back 10, 15 years, everything's gone up. All the things that people need. I know you don't pay for health here, the national health, but national health has gotten worse. There's not as they've closed a lot of hospitals. So I think we've been boiling, they've been boiling us the frogs in terms of the inflation. But I think it's definitely gonna boil really bad, and then unless you jump out of the pot, you're gonna be burned. And by that I mean your savings very soon. I would say the next 18 to 24 months. So 1 year to 2 years. Yeah, Robert, it's quite hot today, wasn't it? It's a bit cooler now. We got a nice breeze. Mike Korn from Sacramento. Hi, Mike. Hogarth regression. What's the biggest secret? Matt Hancock and his company, Porton Biopharma Limited Company. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the people involved in the health crisis and the advisors. You look at, I think, Valence. He's he's one of the advisors. He's head of the Wellcome Trust. Wellcome Trust is a very big tax-free foundation. It was created by I think John Wellcome, who was in the early 1900s pharmaceutical company, and Wellcome Trust now is part of like a GlaxoSmithKline. So you look at all the people involved. Imperial College had a lot of hundreds of millions donated to it by Bill Gates. So even if you look at, I recommend Amazing Polly. She's done a lot of research about uh, Fauci and Birx, how they're connected to Peptar, and so is the Vice President of the United States. He's connected to it as well. So it's really nefarious, I would say. V. Bjorn Gritton, oil up next month, do you think? I'm not too sure. We could, there's still a gap in oil before it collapsed. It gapped from 42 down to 40. So we could close that gap. But it has rallied quite a bit from, below 20 to now low 30. So we'll have to see. 40 is a key level on the upside. Yeah, I've seen that, Lily. StopTheCrime.net, Dablo Tavares. That's a good channel. Brady Girding. Billy is the long lost Hunt brother. Billy Hunt. Yeah, he's gonna corner the silver market. The other thing about gold, holding gold and not holding fiat, is that by holding fiat, any kind of fiat currency, you're financing your government, you're financing the deep state of your country, wherever you may be. So if you're okay, and you're financing the bankers as well. So if you're okay with financing your government, if you're okay with financing the deep state, if you're okay with financing the bankers, then you should hold fiat currency. Maybe, to put it another way, I don't want to do that. When did I hear about Bitcoin? I think it was around 2012, 20, yeah. So I did get involved quite early, but I was just trading it, and I didn't keep that many at the time. So I heard around 2012. Hi, SW. BJB, anyone investing in DRV ETF short, is that short real estate? Uh, the problem with real estate ETFs, we had a fund here in the UK. I think it was last year or the year before. It was a property fund. It wasn't a short one, but when people try to liquidate that fund, the fund went bust because property or real estate is not very liquid. So I wouldn't get involved in anything that's to do with real estate that is a fund, because there's a lot of counterparty risk, because real estate is very illiquid. V. Bjorn Gritton, no, food will, if the dollar weakens, everything gets more expensive. So, no, food will not go down in price. Yeah, that's the way you need to think about it. If your currency loses value or depreciates versus real things, those things will go up in price. You'll need more of those currencies. Jimmy Price from Houston, Texas. Hi, Jimmy. Yeah, I know that Christine Lagarde was convicted by a special court in France in 2016, but they didn't make her serve her year in prison, and she stayed at the IMF as the head of the IMF, and now she was rewarded by becoming president of the ECB. How can you know they're real buying on eBay? Well, the rule, important rule on eBay, and I've dealt on eBay for years, is to deal with someone who has a track record, who has a lot of transactions, and yeah. So I think, but you got to be careful, of course. I assume you're talking about gold. Gold premium coming down in Canada. Uh, Vishwanath NB from India. Physical gold is good, or ETF. No, not ETF. Physical gold. ETF is not gold. ETF is just paper. I I don't recommend ETFs. Yeah, inflation is a thief in the night. It's cheating, really, isn't it? It's if you and I could create banknotes, say I promise to pay you £20 and never have to pay you back. I mean, it would be great, and that's what the bankers can do. What U.S. cities have I been to? Joshua Porter asks. All right, let's see. San Diego. Um, I was in Disneyland, which is in LA, but a very long time ago. San Francisco, Miami, Orlando, New York, Boston, Detroit, Atlanta, Auburn, Alabama, when I went to the Mises Institute. So, where else? Haven't really been to the Midwest that really, I guess Detroit is not Midwest, but Seattle as well. When did I go to Seattle? In 1971. My dad used to sail a lot, and he used to like doing races. And he used to travel a lot and take the family. So I've been to Seattle as well. So that's about it. Oh, and Hawaii. So Honolulu. Riots, divide and conquer. Yeah, that's what the powers that be need, right? They're scared of losing control, that people are too together, so they need to divide and conquer. Andrew Aragi, would be great if you could get Tim Price on your show. Yeah, I've heard of Tim Price. I used to read some of his stuff years ago. I think he used to write for some financial publications here in the UK. I don't know him though, but thank you for the suggestion. Any BM, what would you advise to a friend who is invested into stocks and bonds? Cross fingers. It's hard question. It depends if he's there for the long haul. Uh, you never know. We could keep going down, and I think we will go down further in the next year or two. But if that person's willing to hold on for the next 10, 15, 20 years, he could be okay. Uh, it's not for me to decide. And I don't even know what companies he's invested in. And in terms of bonds, I would stick to short-term bonds, not longer-term bonds, because they're safer because, yeah, like 1 or 2 years instead of 5 and 10. Robert 292 thinks gold may open 50 higher. I'm not sure. We'll see. Seeker of the light, Mary, you hold Bitcoin. Talk it up more with gold. Well, Bitcoin is not money like gold and silver. It is a currency, and I think it's more volatile. It's just that you have to pick. I think what you're good at and what you really believe in. Uh, I think Bitcoin is a good substitute to the fiat currencies, but I think gold and silver have more of the track record. But I'll keep that in mind, seeker of the light. Russian overnight bond. Uh, the problem with Russian bonds, I guess, if it's denominated in rubles, the ruble is generally not a very stable currency. Brady Girding, I don't have that much in crypto. I do have, I did invest in a crypto fund, Bank to the Future, about 4 years ago. That's done quite well. And I'm still invested. It's a private fund, so uh, all I get is dividends and payouts. But all the dividends that I've gotten have more than paid for what I put into the fund, and they're heavily invested in Kraken and some other crypto projects. Clive Raza says, Bo Pony says today is a turning point. Any opinions? Well, I think in terms of what's going on in the States, he's been dead on. Um, you know, he was talking about the end of May being very important. And what's happened in the end of May in the States is really quite big. We'll just have to wait and see if this keeps going, what's going on in the States right now. I'm not talking about a health crisis. We got another crisis now. Bobby8270 says Queen Elizabeth has stepped down. The end of the monarchy as we know it, not before time, in my opinion. Oh, I hadn't seen that, Bobby. I have to read the papers. Lorenzo Mari, is there a limit up to gold against dollar that you see? Do you mean the limit up on COMEX, like where they stop the trading during the day, or do you mean how far gold can go to the dollar? That's what I think. Well, you have to ask the other question, the other way. I think how far down can the dollar go? And the dollar could go to zero versus gold. So gold could go to infinity. That's how you should look at it, because gold is at the center of everything. Gold has been money. As JP Morgan said, that gold is money, everything else is credit. So that's the dollar is really a Federal Reserve note, it's credit. So yeah, there is no downside. The downside in the dollar is like infinite versus gold. So it could go, the price of gold in dollars could go to infinity. That would be the hyperinflation, and then they'd have to come up with a new currency because people wouldn't take the Federal Reserve note. They wouldn't accept it in exchange for gold. JD, I guess I just answered your question. Mike Horn, do you want to comment on Soros? I hear he's causing the anarchy. Like the coronavirus, he might be involved in this, but he's just like a a puppet master, maybe. But what's going on right now is not just because of him. I think there's a lot of unhappiness. People are angry as well. They wouldn't be doing this if there wasn't a problem. And I think Soros is not like the big man that people think. There's a much bigger people behind him. I've done a video about that. I think he's financed by the Wallenberg family in Sweden. The Wallenbergs own much of Sweden. Yeah, so I'm not so sure if it's just him or it's very easy to use that excuse and not to look at yourself in the mirror. And I think you look at the wealth inequality you've had in the States for the last 30 years. The top 10% in the US, they own about almost 90% of all the stock market wealth. um, you know the average person's real wage has gone nowhere in the last 30, 40 years, while the people at the very top, the 1%, their wealth is skyrocketed. So there's a lot more than just Soros, I think. It's people are sick and tired, I think. The wealth inequality. Am I a socialist? No. I'm a free market, a small government guy. And what you've had in the last 30, 40 years is socialism for the very wealthy. And the people at the bottom are fed up, I think. Yeah, and maybe Soros is taking advantage of that, but it wouldn't happen if the conditions weren't right. Mobius, do you think cryptocurrencies will make central banks obsolete? Not really. I don't think so. I don't think cryptocurrencies are that popular yet. They may be in the future. I think what could make central banks obsolete is the collapse of their scheme. Uh, and what would come after that? I think gold and silver would be a big part of the next system. But I don't think cryptocurrencies are going to make central banks obsolete. I don't think, very few people know about cryptocurrencies. But if the monetary system collapsed, then you told the public we're going to go back to gold and silver, people would know what that is. I think very few people would know what cryptocurrencies are. I'm not saying it could be. I think maybe the market will decide. We'll have to see, but I would put my money on gold and silver. Lily Robin, unfortunately, you could be right. The same suspect might draw up the new system. Doesn't mean we can't benefit from the transition, and that's why I think you need to be in gold and silver, maybe a few cryptos too. Housing market, any thoughts? Well, in the UK, house prices could remain stable in nominal prices. They might even go up, but when the pound is dropping as it is it that relevant? Um, yeah, I wouldn't speculate in housing. Evelyn War. No, I won't. I won't do that. What you asked me. Yeah, I know how Bitcoin works. Attack helicopter, the mining and the blockchain. I know how it works. but it's something created by man. Gold and silver are created by nature, or if you believe in God or a creator or something, it's better money, I think, gold and silver. It's been money for, and currency as well, for thousands of years. Cryptocurrency might be a good thing, but it's still a man made. Can we trust men? Generally not. Oh, we got some JFK people here. Okay. Uh, let's see. I'm not sure. Too sure the Fed will own everything. Okay, I'll take a couple of more questions, and we're on the hour mark. I'll end soon. Baird and Co. in London. I think I've used them once. Uh, I'm not sure if they're. I've seen that Atkinson's is having problem with deliveries. Gold Investments, they're up and running. They deliver in 1 or 2 days. Colombian economic predictions. Sorry, I don't follow the Colombian economy. All right. Thank you, everyone, for showing up and participating. I wish you all a great rest of the weekend or the week if you're in Australia. I guess it's Monday. Take care, everyone. Thank you. Bye.